Okay. It's great to see you here tonight. We are very, very excited. We've thought long and hard about what the topics should be for this community forum, and we thought we'll get right to the heart of what makes us extraordinary and extraordinarily different, and that is our foundational philosophy. Children are competent and resourceful and powerful. They are willing to try and try again. And they learn best in joyful environments where the curriculum is responsive and speaks to their interests. So you all received a copy of this wonderful book, What School Could Be by Ted Dintersmith. You know me generally. Most of you have scoured the website if you haven't heard me a multitude of times over years, and you've seen my bio, and so you know much about me. However, I want to highlight a couple of things that have happened during COVID, during the pandemic. In addition to all the work that was done to keep the school running, and then to through the first 3 months, right, and then to get it up and running for the new school year. While that was going on, there was a whole nother sort of level of experience in my professional life. And in that process of meeting and joining side by side with other industry thought leaders and speakers, I came upon, was reminded of this book by Ted Dintersmith, and had the pleasure of meeting Ted Dintersmith and spending a good bit of time talking to him about his experiences, his thoughts about education and the way of the world. Ted comes from a business background, and with that lens, traveled for a year to schools all around the country, looking for what makes schools unique, responsive, and what makes education effective. And so as we got to know each other better, he offered to give us these books, and he sent me a couple of boxes of books. And so therefore we can use this as our kicking off for a year of community forums. And I will also probably reference it in some of our coffees with Karen, which we have one coming up next Tuesday, you'll be reminded of. The only issue I take with Ted is that he didn't find Voyagers when he did this. And that is quite unfortunate, because in these pages over and over again, I see our school, I see our philosophy, I see our approach, I see our teachers, I see our students, I see our parents. You can take all the various schools and all the aspects of those schools and find probably 99% of them here. So I think that is quite fascinating. And we are now on Ted's radar. And I believe that at some point we'll have the pleasure of having him visit. But tonight I'm going to open with a Dintersmith quote. And then I'm going to move it on to each of the staff members, and they're going to talk to you about aspects of our curriculum development and our foundational, and its connection to our foundational philosophy and our students. The quote that I picked for tonight is as follows: "When you standardize education, you rob students of any opportunity to go deep on what they care about, to build distinctive capacities, and to create differentiated paths forward, the very thing that will enable them to thrive in the innovation era, the very essence of the American dream." I am going to now pass off to Katie. No? Yes?
Yeah.
Good.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So as most of you know, I am the pedagogista here, but I didn't start in that role. I've been here over 12 years, and I came as a starry-eyed progressive teacher looking for the perfect school to change the world, and it changed me along the way. So I've grown just as much as the school has over the years. And I feel really blessed because I still get to spend time in the classroom alongside my administration job. So this helps me keep my pulse on the entire school. And I get to see the process of learning from end to end, planning, implementing, those aha moments, overcoming fears as the kids get on stage, and really just pure joy every day. And so I think that that is a really unique role for an administrator to have, and be able to experience kind of both roles, being a teacher and being able to work with the teachers. So as we work with the teachers and we work with each other, you know, the questions that we return to over again that are really the foundation of our curriculum are really what's important, what really matters, why care, and why bother. We ask ourselves these questions over and over again. So before we go any further though, I want to ask you guys to participate in an activity. So take a minute and think back to your most memorable childhood experiences, ones that brought you joy. So I'm going to ask that you jot down a note in the chat so that we can read them aloud. But think about, like, where were you? Who were you with? What smells, what tactile and sensory feelings can you recall from those really fundamental moments that stand out to you still as an adult? So as you guys start to jot those down, I actually will introduce Allison. So Allison is an educational consultant that's been with us for a couple years now. She's really invaluable to our team. And I'll let Allison introduce herself, and then we'll read some of your experiences aloud as they come into the chat.
Thanks, Katie. For those of you who I haven't met formally, my name is Allison Keelan. I've worked in the field of education for over 30 years. I've been a principal, a vice principal, a supervisor of curriculum and instruction. But my most favorite job was being a teacher, and that's where I found my greatest joys, was spending time with the kids and watching them figure things out and overcome any obstacles. That was always my favorite thing. I was also an adjunct professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at Monmouth University for several years. So that's a little bit about me.
I see some great ones coming in here. I'm going to add one of my own.
I love the responses. They're so moving. I'm noticing, Katie, I don't know if you're noticing too, is that a lot of the comments are about building strong relationships, you know, doing things outside of, you know, outside a lot with nature.
Yeah, and that's similar to what I expected to find. So let's read some aloud in case anybody's not looking at the chat. So let's start back at the top. It says, playing outside for hours unsupervised.
I love that one. That one was a major life changer for me, and I'm sure for many people.
I think that's kind of the core of all of my good memories, whether we actually were supervised or not. We didn't think we were. Learning to garden with my neighbor, who was a retired chemist and a fantastic gardener. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of us did some gardening through the stay-at-home orders too. I know a lot of kids came back in talking about that.
And I can't imagine the knowledge that was passed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And building that. Running through the woods behind my house, building forts and swinging on ropes to cross the stream. Pretty sure I saw kids doing that today. Building an epic snow fort with my brothers. Building first and going on adventures with my friends. I think building forts and going on adventures with my friends. Spending time outside with my mother's garden, playing in the flowers and dirt, making things with sticks and petals, etc., alongside my dogs. A bike ride down what was to me a huge mountain. I can relate to that. Wind in my hair and big smile on my face. I still get that. Yeah, the hills seemed so big. I've revisited some hood hills lately. We're not that big. Lighting the candles on the Christmas tree on cold December evenings, singing and playing the piano as a family. Making hay forts with my neighbors, making treasure maps and hunting for treasure in the woods. I remember waking up early to go crabbing at the bay with my dad and brother. It seemed miraculous to pull up a crab on a string, scoop it up with a net, and chase it across the dock.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Camping in New Hampshire with my entire family. Loved the smells of the forest and using my imagination to create worlds around me to keep me busy. Learning to garden with my, oh wait, I read that one. Spending hours in his backyard playing spies as my grandpa mowed the lawn in my grandma garden. That's sweet. Playing in the river behind my house with friends. My most memorable childhood experiences were with my dad exploring parks and woods all over the Northeast. We camped a lot, and I will never forget how he showed me to spot a birch tree and taste the bark, birch beer, or how to carefully pick up a praying mantis. He taught me to love all of nature. My most joyful times were when my friends and I were free from our parents, playing games in the old cemetery across the street from our house. There was no one there. We were free to be ourselves, take care of ourselves, and explore to our heart's content. We made up games, made forts, and role-played various real-life and make-believe scenarios. Playing spies with my neighbors, being investigators of people and habits. I'm sure some of that carried over to adult life. Archery with friends and the joy of hitting the target. And Maggie says, making snow mazes with my brother. That sounds really cool. So I think we can see some common themes that run throughout here. Being with friends, having autonomy, being outside in nature, taking chances and risks, just open-ended play. And I think that that's really the essence of being alive. I mean, that's really what you want to get from life. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls it flow, when you're in the moment and you forget about everything else. And if you can find a hobby, or you can find any time in your life that you can achieve flow, that's the ultimate attainment.
I agree. I think that, when students have the opportunity, or when children have the opportunity to get out there and, through all of these activities, you had to take risks, you had to try new things, you failed sometimes you had incredible successes. And those were the times when you learned so much, because it came from what you wanted to do. So those are really good points.
I think it's interesting that so little of this involves school.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's so much that's expressed in terms of what was learned.
And joyfully.
Mm-hmm. And with freedom.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So Katie, shall I take over and move forward?
Yeah, there's one more quote. It says, my most memorable joy was the freedom to go outside until the street lights came on. I feel like I learned all my social emotional intelligence tussling with friends with no adult interference or judgment. Mm-hmm. I think it was really just magical. Thank you everybody for sharing.
And at this point, I kind of want to jump in and build on some of this. So I'm excited to talk about the amazing work that's taking place at Voyagers Community School and what we do on a daily basis. And beginning with the book by Ted Dintersmith, What Schools Could Be. This was such a powerful book because it shared the insights of Ted Dintersmith as he embarked on this amazing quest, and he examined schools from all over the United States. And as he visited 50 states, he convened 100 community forums. He visited over 200 schools of all types and had thousands of meetings. And the schools that he explored, they ranged from very poor to very affluent. So, in this journey, he met teachers and children doing extraordinary things that led them to blossom. And so through this process, Dintersmith developed a powerful vision of what schools could be. And, he identified 4 common principles that he referred to as PEAK. P meaning purpose, E meaning essentials, A with agency, and K with knowledge. So what does that mean? Well, Dintersmith found that students thrive in environments where they're able to develop those 4 elements. So purpose. Students attack challenges that they know to be important, that make their world better. When he saw that in schools, that's where he saw students thrive, when they had opportunities for that. When he also noted that students had to have essentials. They had to acquire skill sets and mindsets that were needed in an increasingly innovative world. And, I just look back and reflect on the last, since March, how much our world has changed in some ways and how we had to adapt and how we had to think differently. And, so we project that forward with what skills and mindsets do we want our children to have? Because they're going to have to adapt in so many different ways. We also want students to have agency. So we saw students thrive, or he saw students thrive when they took agency over their learning, becoming self-directed, which led them to become intrinsically, motivated as adults. And finally, knowledge. He recognized that students need to learn things, but they need to learn knowledge deeply and retain it so that they can take that knowledge and then create things, make things, teach others. Now, having worked in a traditional public school, I was touched by this quote. In the typical American classroom, Dintersmith states, students are told what to study and when to study it. They cover content rather than develop anything essential. So they're pushed to jump through hoops and outperform their peers. And it really hollows out any sense of purpose. So even those top academic achievers, we're seeing some research that shows that they're retaining a little coursework that, that's been shoved down their throats. And I observed this many times. Teachers were bogged down by curriculum expectations with unrealistic timelines. There was no way. Students didn't have time to explore their interests on a daily basis. And essentially, the entire curriculum was driven by high stakes tests. And teachers were required to teach to a test that really doesn't prepare them for the world. And so students become forced to adapt to these learning conditions that break down their imagination, their creativity, the curiosity, the interest in learning, and their social emotional health. So in essence, it was, I observed it breaking their spirits. So when I met Karen and we talked about our philosophies, I was so excited to become a part of Voyagers because it was a school that provided students with opportunities to grow and explore in ways that were progressive, which were aligned to how I believe students should be taught and was research-based. This is research-based. So when Ted Dintersmith, he also states in the book, peak classrooms give students the agency to take unpredictable paths, and remarkable things happen when kids learn organically and passionately, instead of painting by the numbers. So in this sense, at Voyagers, learning isn't based on low-level understanding of content. It focuses on giving students the opportunity to explore content deeply. Voyagers is able to tailor instruction to the students' excitement and interest, and it's not going to look like a traditional school with just paper and pencil tasks with, projects thrown in here or there. When you're sitting at I don't know if we'll be sitting at all at the Thanksgiving table, but socially distanced, you might hear how your families, how different people in your families go to school and their experiences. And, Voyagers is going to be different. And so our teachers challenge students to think critically and creatively, to make observations, to formulate opinions, to problem solve and collaborate every single day. Every single day. And these are the skills that high stakes assessments just can't measure in an individual child and your child. So Dintersmith states in his book, be inspired by children mastering what enables them to flourish. Observe learning conditions that prepare students to capitalize rather than be victimized by machine intelligence. Be blown away by innovative teachers bucking the system to show us the way forward. We're going to learn from them. And that's what's happening, tonight. We're going to go through a lot of the different experiences and behind the scenes look of what happens at Voyagers. So in this sense, you're going to see the excitement in learning for your children, meaningful engagement with their peers, active learning. And the Voyager students become co-creators of the curriculum with their teachers. And a critical goal of the educational experience is to give agency and power over to the students. So we work on executive functioning. We encourage their curiosity on a daily basis. We develop habits of learning on a daily basis, which kind of leads up to several important days that you're invited to participate in. These are like culminating events that the students, they get to showcase all of these skills that we've been building upon. So for example, we have parent-teacher conferences that are led by the students. And they get to, share their goals. They get to talk about, what's important to them. And they start to self-reflect upon their goals and say, where am I at? And that starts to build agency. We start to see this. And they take ownership of their progress toward these goals. And that's important. And then we also have project weeks. And so students will develop and submit proposals for projects that excite them and bring them joy and challenge their abilities. And through those project weeks, they learn to develop plans, manage time, obtain resources, research information. They work on public speaking skills. They connect with mentors. It's such an exciting time because it's during project weeks that they get to demonstrate all of the incredible skills that we have been fostering daily through their learning. And they connect it with a project that they are passionate about. So it's a huge responsibility for them to take on, and it's one we all look forward to each year. So those are some of the things that I hope you'll keep in mind as the teachers kind of share the behind the scenes look of what goes on in their classrooms and at Voyagers. So at this time, I'm going to be passing it off to Jess, who will expand more on some of these ideas.
Thank you, Allison. So I'm here to share with you some of the research that guides us here at Voyagers. So these are some themes that you'll find both in Ted's book and beyond. So first, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself. So I started my career in the public school system. I taught in the public school system for almost 10 years here in New Jersey. I was certified in elementary, middle, high school, special ed, math, and science. And while I loved what I did, I was always interested in the big why behind everything we do in schools. So that inspired me and my own education. So I earned 2 masters while I was teaching at night. And I just always wanted to learn more. And that journey actually inspired me to leave the public school system for some time. I thought I would be back. I actually went on a journey of my own. I started a doctorate program at Drexel in Philadelphia. So I studied educational leadership and learning technologies. And that included 4 years of school-based research throughout all different types of schools in Philadelphia, all over the city. The majority of that time was spent investigating failure. So that's my passion project. I look specifically at design failure. So that's like what students experience when they're building something, creating something, designing something, and it's not functioning. So I ask questions about how students experience failure within the classroom, the discourse or the conversation that occurred between teachers and students, how that impacted students, and really my ultimate goal and still is how can we create failure supportive environments? So those experiences led me to find a progressive community here at Voyagers, and that really impacts everything I do here. So I'm here to share with you some things that happen behind the scenes and how we use research-based practices to guide what we do. So I'll just give you a few examples. One thing that I'm personally interested in research is it's called mathematical discourse. So that's the importance of getting our learners to talk during math class. So our goal here, I teach math and co-teach and co-plan in the lower school, but it's, school-wide, we really want to reveal their thinking or unveil their thinking. We want to find out the things that, that there's going on inside the brain. So these are some things that unfortunately might be unseen to you, the parents, because while we try our best to share snippets of this on Seesaw, for an example, in the K2 room, it might look like we're asking a student to add single digits when as their parent, they can do that, right? But it's the mathematical discourse or those conversations that allow us to engage in mathematical reasoning and debate and reinforce strategies like base 10 or 10's complements. That's numbers that add up to 10. So we now know that that's what makes the student a good math student. So if you think about yourself and your mathematical ability, so you probably, if you think you're strong in math, that's something that comes naturally to you. But we know that that's something we can teach. And in the same sense, we also like to incorporate something called productive struggle. So that's purposefully and thoughtfully creating opportunities where students struggle and they fail and they get frustrated. So yes, we do that on purpose, but this is where the magic happens. And again, this might look like a novel task to observer from home, but it's purposeful. And we love to see what students do and how they react. So, as a teacher researcher, as an observer in the room, I look at them and I think, do they stop? Do they get curious? Are they determined? Or do they go so far off task that they're just on something else? And really what we're looking for is how we can bring them back. So how we can create an environment of learning where every single student learns to persist through failure. We also really focus on process over product here. And we know that language matters. So that's, at the forefront of our minds when we're teaching. So saying you worked really hard on that and emphasizing the process has a different impact than you did a great job and focusing on the final product. Another thing that is one of my favorites is borrowed from mathematics research is the notice and wonder technique. So that's when you ask a student to look at an image or a graph and say, what do you notice? What do you wonder? I often use it back on them and I, watch them while they're working. And I said, I notice you use counters to solve that addition problem. I wonder what other strategies you can use to find the same answer. So we invite you to use that same language at home. Ask them when they're doing all different types of things. What do you notice? What do you wonder? So, we really do emphasize 21st century skills here. And I know that's a very buzzy buzzwords, but this is something we do every day. So we really think to ourselves, what do our students need for their future? So we're not looking at specific skills. Like for an example, I believe every student should graduate high school with the ability to code. And yes, that's hot right now, but it's in 10 years, it's more important that they learned something that frustrated them, that they learned that they could persist through that, that they learned how to follow a passion. That's what's going to guide them through. And that's what really matters. Another example is design thinking. So this is all about iteration. We encourage our students to understand the problem, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, identify alternative strategies, and come up with solutions that are not instantly apparent to them. Again, this might seem like a hot topic, but it's something that crosses all disciplines. It's not unique to design or even engineering. It's in all industries. So what really matters here is that we're teaching our students to extract these techniques and apply them in creative and innovative ways. So maybe they don't need to know how to build a tower of uncooked spaghetti like you see them doing on Seesaw. But when they're 30, they will remember a time when they had absolutely no clue where to begin, and they'll remember persisting through that. And then, you know, when they later in life, when they are 30, they'll remember, what did I do first? Okay, I identified the problem, and that's where they'll begin, and that's what will make them successful. So how does all of this matter to us? Well, it brings us back to what we do here. So all of these observations we make impact our learning goals, which, as has been previously stated, we co-create and we revisit regularly. So these goals are different for every student, and they're created based on conversations between co-teachers, between the students, looking at formative assessment data, which you'll hear more about in a minute. And one of the things that I think is most unique to us is our collaboration between teachers, co-teachers. We co-plan, we have amazing mentorship experiences that really cross traditional boundaries. So these mentorship experiences are, you know, among teachers, veteran teachers, administrators, are in the classrooms, co-teaching, co-planning. We're always together talking about how we can make decisions that best suit the children. And most importantly, we are always listening and we're always observing. So this results in a truly responsive curriculum where we change groups, we change curriculum to follow their interests. We listen both inside and outside of the room. So, you know, we listen to you, the parents, we do on the arrival and pickup lines. We listen to your students in the hall. We listen to them on the yard. What are they talking about? And we really do our very best to connect these passions back into our classrooms, which you'll see all throughout the year. And our goal is to really be fully present with them in the yard and everywhere in between. So now that you know some of the research that guides us, Katie's going to come back on the amazing work our teachers do to implement this daily.
Thanks, Jess. That was great. Yeah, so that focusing back on our teachers, you know, you really have to have the right mindset to be a teacher. It's such an important practice. And as progressive educators, we kind of have to have our bag of tricks alongside our toolbox that helps us navigate the environment, as it can be loud, it can be messy at times, and we need tools to help our classroom function, to help us gather data and gather information about each student as we plan for the individual as a whole person, as a whole child in their social, emotional, and academics. Ted Dintersmith points out that the role of the teacher changes in peak environments. They don't try to outdo the internet in delivering content. They empower students to find, critique, and leverage available resources. They don't lecture. These teachers advise, mentor, and coach. They care. They change lives. Every school has teachers itching to create knock your socks off learning experiences. In an environment of trust, they'll move forward and inspire those around them. So here we trust our teachers, and our professional development really focuses around giving us the tools that we need to be the most effective guide that we can be, so we can better trust ourselves in the classroom. I want to share with you some of our formative assessment tools. So each of these is really just a singular tool used to inform and empower the teacher formally and informally to create individualized small group and whole group learning experiences, and to develop their, like I said, their social, emotional, and academic intellects, because all parts of the student need to be functioning in order to be learning in the classroom. So these are the tools that the teachers use kind of behind the scenes and with the students. So curriculum mapping. So this will come up probably in conversations with your students and your teachers. But when we curriculum map, we ask the big question, why bother? And if we can't answer that and be satisfied, then we won't teach it. But when we're curriculum mapping, we're really trying to foresee all the possible directions that a unit could take and be prepared by thinking through all of the possibilities of field trips, mentors, resources, curriculum sources. We collaborate with our teachers and oftentimes with our students as we're talking through things, and show them how we go through the process of designing the curriculum actively. And we really just try to think broadly about the directions that the study might take, because we're following the students' lead in the classroom. So oftentimes a curriculum map will have tons of possibilities, but inevitably the students will find a certain path, and sometimes it's a path that takes you to a whole different curriculum map and you don't end up where you thought you would. But they're still learning the core essential ideas, regardless of what the subject is. We are also using ExactPath and courseware flex paths with the students. So these online platforms are a piece of the understanding of the whole child, and they can give us valuable insights behind the scenes, but they don't drive the curriculum. They just help us get eyes on each student and where they might need a little bit extra support, where they might need a little mini lesson to get them up to par with the other students in their group to move on with other lessons. We do a lot of record keeping and documentation. So this takes place in a wide variety of ways, and it acts as a way for teachers to revisit their development over time and to have deeper discussions with their co-teachers and bring it back to the students about things that they've said, wonderings they might have had. So we really try to document regularly. Ongoing celebrations of learning. So Allison highlighted some of these, but we have Showcase, where students get up and speak and in front of the audience. We have museums where they talk one-on-one with people, asking questions and sharing their work. And project weeks have presentations as well. And that gives them a chance to share their passions with the community and get over some of the fears a lot of them have. And the first time students start to get up there, it can be a really big deal for them. And then the second time it's a little bit easier, and pretty soon they're surprised because they're winning, student choice awards and things like that. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes though when we're leading up to these celebrations. So we are working on the executive functioning skills, and the end results that you see are just a small part of this tool. We also talked to our teachers about having a guideline of maintaining a 75% listening to 25% speaking ratio. So the teacher is allowing the students' voices to lead. This leaves time for observations and presenting their words back to the students, asking provoking questions. And we learn a lot about the students from listening and observing. And that leads into a technique we use called Socratic Seminar. So that's a big part of our upper school especially, but the same idea takes place at all age levels. So these are roundtable discussions tied to readings where the voices of the students are heard by all the people involved, and their words really drive the inquiry into the text. So they speak directly to each other. They're not really just answering to a teacher like you might think in a traditional classroom. And they're really learning to support their own opinions and think aloud and be challenged by peers. Oftentimes they're asked to refer back to the text for proof. And so they're learning to navigate sometimes difficult conversations. And that's a really, truly a life skill. We also give the students of all ages the gift of time and access to materials. So in other words, play. This is valuable open-ended time, not only for the students, but also for the teachers to learn more about their students and see what directions they lead when left to their own devices. And what we're doing on an ongoing basis is really valuing and developing, harnessing intrinsic motivation. So teachers are often focused on helping the students identify their own interests and set realistic goals. We try to set them moving forward on a path that helps each student reach their own goals, and we really value their own desires and the strengths of each student. And so we're setting the stage for a deep retained knowledge. Along with this, we use scaffolding to support each student's learning experience. Teachers meet each student where they are and bring them forward, like I said, on their own path. So each student might need different things in order to move forward, and they may be headed to a different place. But every student is moving forward based on what their needs are. And so we're open about equity. And it's often a topic that will come up. Why does that student need this and somebody else doesn't get the same thing? So we're often talking about that in our classrooms, and students start to do that for themselves, and we start to hand over the agency to them. We brainstorm a lot together, and this helps the students realize that the teachers value their ideas, that there's no wrong ideas. Ideas help us move forward in new directions. And as Jess said, you know, we value the process and the productive struggle that takes place when developing projects. So overall, we help students acquire skills and strategies. That helps them work independently. They use their logic and their planning skills and develop executive functioning skills, take ownership of their own processes from the teacher, and carry their own learning forward ultimately. So that was a lot of teacher talk, but to see what these ideas really look like in action, we're going to hear from our teachers. So they've been asked to give you very brief examples to illustrate our philosophy at work. And first we will hear from the lower team. So I will turn it over to Sandy.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sandy, and I am the Wilson Reading Specialist. So just to give you a little background about myself, for those of you that don't know me, I've been a teacher at Voyagers for 12 years now. I started a little bit after Katie, so she wins that race. But I've been here for several years. I started out teaching in the kindergarten through second grade classroom. And since my time here, I've then moved into the office, working in the front office at the desk, and then getting my certification as a reading specialist in the Wilson program, and then taking that knowledge and working in the lower team, teaching the reading workshops. So, and that's what I do now with the lower team, the K-2 class and the 3-5 class. So just to start, I want to start with the quote from the book, and I do apologize because it is a long one, but I think it's important. One of the things I think that people often think is that what we do at Voyagers is somehow new, and that, you know, it hasn't been around for a while. So the quote says, occasionally, someone will ask if ideas like learning by doing or conditions that empower are just another education fad, like the latest round of new math. But these important ideas date back to Ted Zeiser, who said, inspiration, hunger, these are the qualities that drive good schools. The best we education planners can do is to create the most likely conditions for them to flourish and then get out of the way. To John Dewey, who said, give the pupils something to do, not something to learn. And the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking, learning naturally results. At the end of the quote, which I'm going to skip to, he says, today's world is exacting, even ruthless. In the last century, the views of these education visionaries were important, but in this century, they are indispensable. And like the other staff members who you've already heard about, you know, really giving students the understanding and the power to think for themselves, speak up for themselves, decide what it is that they want to study and advocate for themselves are all so important in this day and age, and we really want to make sure that we empower our students to do that. So one of the things that Katie had mentioned was the exact path and the courseware flex path that we use as a form of understanding where your children are in their learning and what skills they need next to move them to the next level to continue to acquire skills. So the way that that works is each student has their own exact path work. They take an assessment in reading, language arts, and math. From that initial assessment, the teachers see results and the children see results as to what their next focus is going to be. Each one of the exact paths has a lesson to do. So in any given time, the student will go onto the exact path and they'll do a lesson based on the work that they did previously and the work that they need to continue to focus on. On our end, we can go into that program. We can look at the skills that they have mastered, the skills that they're struggling with, and the skills that haven't been introduced yet, and then plan accordingly for them. So for example, I teach reading workshops. So obviously I have a very specific agenda when I go into the classroom. One of the things that we do in reading workshop is word study. So word study is just looking at the patterns in words in the English language and how to encode them or decode them depending on if we're reading or if we're spelling. When we do a word study, we're looking at, so when I look at my exact path courseware, I can see that there's a specific group of children who need to work on syllables and dividing words up into syllables so that you can then figure out how to spell them and how to decode them when you're reading. If I didn't have that exact path, I could waste an entire class's time teaching them about syllables when maybe only 2 people in the class really need to know more about syllables because everybody else already understands the process. So exact path gives me the opportunity to specifically work with certain students with mini lessons or small groups that are specifically focused on the skills that they need to continue to work on to achieve mastery. Another thing that Katie mentioned briefly was our thinking about our 75 and 25%. So 75% of the time in the classroom, we should spend listening to children, and 25% of the time, we should spend talking to the children. So when in my reading workshop, we do a read aloud. And so obviously a read aloud, I spend quite a bit of time reading the story to the children. But what I often do is I'll stop and, I wonder what the author meant by that, and try to bring about these conversations so that the children have opportunities to let us know what it is that they understand about the book and share with the rest of the class what they're thinking about the story. Using exact path, though, I can even hone in my questions even more. So when I look at my exact path and the students in the class, I can see that there's a group of kids who are struggling with figurative language. So when I'm doing my read aloud and I'm posing these, I'm wondering questions to them, I'm specifically focusing on looking at the figurative language in the book and asking children to wonder about that. This allows me to have that type of mini lesson with the group. It allows children who already understand about figurative language to be a mentor to the other children in the class, and therefore really teach them about the figurative language. There's somebody in the class already who's an expert in this figurative language, and they can kind of be the mentor in the classroom and help the other children to see the thought process or what the author is saying when they're using these specific terms. The other great thing about this exact path is that I am able to really think about what it is that I'm doing in the class and changing it. So if I have a plan that I was going to do an activity on alphabetical order tomorrow, but I see that everybody in the class already understands alphabetical order, then I know not to waste their time in doing that and to focus on something else that's more relevant to where they are in their learning. So that's, you know, basically how Exact Path is used when I'm working with the reading workshop in the K-3 class and the 3-5 class. Obviously, other teachers are using it in the same type of way, but they're focusing on different skills depending on the classes that they're teaching. I'd like to pass it on now to Ashley, and she will share a little bit about what she does in her classroom.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ashley. For those of you who don't know, I am the West 2 teacher. So I teach the kindergarten, first and second grade students along with my co-teachers. And I'm going to talk very briefly about myself and then go into some details about how we do science here and the curriculum behind science. So I went to Vermont where I studied education. And I'm an outdoor lover myself, and I spent a lot of time in nature. And one experience that made me passionate about the outdoors is my time spent hiking the Long Trail, which is a 372-mile long distance hike along the mountain range in Vermont. It goes from the most southern part in Vermont to Canada, and it took me 3 weeks. And along the journey, I learned the importance of connecting with nature and perseverance. And that really drives me when I'm teaching science and encouraging students to embrace nature and encouraging students to try their best. So a quote that stood out to me when I think about Voyagers, it's from the beginning of chapter 7, Ted Dintersmith states, "Is the purpose of school to develop human potential or to rank it? The answer seems obvious. Clearly, children attend school to find their talents and interests, develop their potential, and get the education required to lead fulfilling and responsible lives." At Voyagers, we do exactly that. We help students develop their talents and their interests. So for science, I'm constantly observing what the students' interests are to base the lessons around that and to make the science unit around that. And so students guide instruction. And when the students are guiding instruction, they're learning better because they're more engaged. In the beginning of the school year, I was still getting to know the students and they were still adjusting to their surroundings. And we have science in the Arboretum. So a lot of what we were observing when we were first going into the Arboretum was the trees and the leaves and all of that around us. So that was our first focus of study. The Arboretum is our living laboratory. It's awesome. The students are able to have real life experiences. They can partake in hands-on learning. And this helps guide the students' learning as well. I'm seeing them make observations. I'm seeing them exploring nature. I'm seeing them formulating questions, formulating ideas, hypotheses. And also, science always involves research. So some of our lessons require cross-curricular instruction. So for example, when we studied tree species, we brought in nonfiction texts to help us identify trees by their leaves. There also might be some like journaling about what they're doing in science and just taking notes on their experiences and their observations. So in the past few weeks, I have been observing the students and I noticed one group of students are so intrigued by bugs and insects. So every bug they find, they come up to me so excited about it. And they're like little field scientists out there, like picking up huge logs to see what bugs are underneath those logs. And that's really fascinating, and that's really fun to me. And then another group of students are really engaged in wolves, and they've been pretending that the big, beautiful trees in the Arboretum are their wolf dens, and they've been kind of acting out being wolves and being like this wolf pack, which is also really fun to watch. And so moving forward, we will build upon these interests to guide our lessons by grouping students and exploring deeply the information that helps them learn about whatever they want to learn about, bugs, wolves. The science curriculum really strives to engage students. They have so much fun, they're connected, they're, you know, helping each other, they're being curious, and they're focused. They're focused because they are engaged in what they're learning, and in this way they can learn efficiently. So I'm really excited to continue learning with them, to see their potential, to see their minds open and evolve, especially in our science class. And yeah, I'm going to pass it on to Rebecca now.
Hi guys, my name is Rebecca. I am the home-based teacher in North 2, which is the 3rd through 6th grade classroom. And I'm going to open up telling you a little bit about my story. So when I was in 1st grade, my teacher taught us the Pledge of Allegiance in sign language. And I was so fascinated by that. I begged my mom for books, sign language books. I studied on my own in my free time. And then by 5th grade, I had the goal set that I was going to become fluent in sign language and study sign language in college. Fast forward, I did. I studied sign language, and when I graduated college, got a job here at Voyagers. That was about, I believe, 4 years ago now. And they changed my life. The students have changed my life. So I am hoping that Voyagers can spark that same interest in your children. I know it will, that they will be able to go on their own voyage of finding something that they love and exploring it deeper. So my Ted Dintersmith quote is, "Our children should study what's important to learn, not what's easy for you to test. Schools should develop each child's unique potential, not rank it for you with high stakes standardized tests of low level skills." So in global studies, I have heard the kids go, "Who are you voting for? Who are you voting for?" Before global studies class, they were talking about this on the playground in the classroom. I heard another student say, "We're not 18, we can't vote." So I ran with that. I was like, they need to know more about the upcoming election. They're curious, they're asking questions, they're talking to each other about it. So we decided that to start talking about the branches of the government and how the government works. So traditionally, students might have had a paragraph to read or a pamphlet, and then been assessed through answering some multiple choice questions to demonstrate their understanding on the topic. But not at our classes here at Voyagers. In our global studies class, when learning branches of government, to be respectful of all learning styles, we had multiple, we introduced this in multiple ways. We had a diagram of a tree with different branches coming out of it that showed each branch of the government and then listed the jobs within that branch. And that was a great way for our visual learners to understand it. And then we also sung a song for our auditory learners about the branches of government. I encourage you, if you have a lower school student, to ask them about it because it is catchy and will be stuck in your head all week. So as we move forward, the students have been asked to consider a topic or a concern or something that they find important that needs change. And once they do this, they'll research it and write a letter. And then they will also research who within the government do they need to contact for help. So they'll be writing to a specific person, and we are hoping to actually get some responses, which will be so exciting. But with this, it's more than just global studies. The students will gain a deeper understanding and appreciation of the content. They will remember this forever because it's their learning. And within it, they're learning more than just letter writing. They're learning how to develop reading for the purpose of research, writing skills, persuasive writing, and content knowledge, and so much more. So with that being said, meaningful activities is something we do here daily in our classroom. And now I'm going to introduce the upper team, and I believe Katie will be speaking first.
Thanks, Rebecca. You know, it's interesting to me to always see kind of how themes seem to spread across the school. So I'm not surprised, obviously this year is an election year, but you know, this topic's coming up in different classes, and you know, the kids bring it up in their own way, and then the teachers, we have to figure out how to kind of react to it and run with it and take it forward in a way that's meaningful to them. So Larry and I actually in our class today, we're trying to figure out like how to talk about the topics that we're coming up with the middle schoolers in regards to government. And we were talking about how there's a continuum of like no laws and too many laws, and trying to get them to see like that there's a benefit of coming to some agreement in between. And so we'll see where that takes us and takes them. Then this year, I'm also teaching the high school global studies. So I've been actually teaching high school humanities in the upper school for many, many years. So I had a pretty good idea that this year would probably start out with the students reacting to the current events. Being that it's an election year, I started planning during the summer, kind of planting seeds in my curriculum mapping and things like that, because I half expected that the class would be led in this direction, but I really didn't know what direction after that they might take. So I started off the year talking about their summer reading. The Poet X covered some of the themes of identity and being parts of different groups. So I started the discussion there. Then it moved towards the Bill of Rights and the amendments, and we began talking and they realized that voting is really the fundamental right that ensures all of your other rights. And then they noticed that they were all talking about kind of the disenchantment that voters in their own lives and that they see on social media are talking about in regards to voting. So they decided, and we decided together, to do a Get Out the Vote campaign. And so we talked about what that might look like. And they decided that it would be a Twitter and Instagram campaign because that would reach their peers, and they thought that would get it out into the world. And that's a medium that they're familiar with. So it makes sense that it's a 21st century world that we're living in, you know? So they really took the lead on deciding like what would be posted, what the format would be to make it most effective. The platforms, they considered TikTok and things like that, but they decided that the age groups might not be ideal. And and they considered Facebook, but they figured if they did Twitter and Instagram, then it could be translated over to Facebook from there. So once they were invested in that and working, I quickly came to the conclusion that we needed a text. So we started reading One Person, No Vote, how not all voters are treated equally, and really analyzing kind of voter suppression and disenfranchisement, because these are the topics that are being spoken about on the news right now. And it really empowers the students to join with the larger social dialogue, because they're armed with more facts. They have, they've become used to being challenged by their peers. They need to back up their statements with facts. And really, again, this 75%, 25% listening tool really comes into play in the high school, because the students take the lead of these discussions for the most part. Oftentimes I have multiple lessons posted on Google Classroom that I'll never get to use, because the discussions took a different direction, a different path. And, I'm always listening for what comes next, right? So taxes and monopolies and all of these things are kind of swirling around in their conversations, in their minds. And it's my job to kind of tie it into the next topics. So, I may have multiple journal ideas and end up using something that came up in conversation for the actual assignment for the week. So, being responsive really allows for a living, breathing classroom curriculum, and the students feel empowered to step up and be heard. So I think that's really the heart of it. And they take ownership and onus of the class. So it's really exciting. I'll hand it off to Rich, who's going to tell you about himself and talk about physics.
Okay. My name is Rich Nab. If you don't know me, I am a teacher in the upper school. This year, I'm teaching math. I'm teaching science in the high school, also a little bit of the outdoor school science. I've been here almost since the school began. I've been through 3 school buildings so far. And so far in my however many years I've been here, I've taught all the ages between K and 12. And I believe I have taught every single subject possible, including an unfortunate health class, which wasn't exactly fun to teach high schoolers. But the quote that that resonated most with me is actually a part of what Sandy said. And it's really the part of it that's important to me is the first half of it is give the pupil something to do, not something to learn. And I've tried to do that over the last 14 or so years that I've been with the school. Give them a project and let them learn by doing well, by failing, and that analyzing. It brings in what Jess was talking about with an iterative design process where you look and see what went wrong, you analyze it, and you try to improve it. Today, I'll talk a little bit about physics curriculum and how I go about developing that. It's different every time I teach it. So there were some unique things that made this year different. One, it's a high school physics class, and they're responsible for high school physics. But the lab itself is a combination of high school students who get the theory part of the class, as well as outdoor school students who don't attend the theory part of the class. So that was one thing that makes it a little challenging. Other is that the labs had to take place outside, either in the arboretum or in the school building, or outside the school building in the yard. And it adds its own little set of challenges where some of the equipment I just can't use just outside. It won't work in the middle of winter. But so the challenge was to design some sort of curriculum. And frankly, the physics curriculum has been probably unchanged over the last 100 years, with the exception of adding relativity. It's pretty standard. What you learn in physics is kind of what you learn in physics. So I started off on the very first day, like I do with all of my classes, And that's, I just tell them, this is what's considered traditional physics. I said, it's mechanics, it's energy, it's electricity, it's magnetism, optics, sound, nuclear power generation, relativity. And I know I have to teach you mechanics, because that's like things, balls flying through the air and falling and dropping. That's the beginning parts of physics, and everything else derives from that. So I told them, you have to learn mechanics. Everything else is up to you. So with that, I'm co-creating the curriculum with the students based on their interests. I had people saying, oh, I love magnetism. I want to learn about electricity. Somebody raised their hand and said, nuclear power is the one for me. So I have to now incorporate all that, and I can figure out kind of what we're going to do with the curriculum, and with my curriculum map, base what kind of projects can happen. And again, these are my ideas that start out in the beginning of the year, but it's never really what ends up happening. So there's every single class. This is probably I think this is the 4th time I've taught this class, physics, in the high school. And one year they studied atlatls and were throwing spears across the yard for like half the school year. Another time they made a roller coaster. I think there was a giant marble maze one year. And this year, not quite sure what it's going to be. We have some ideas. So what I usually do is I start the beginning of the year with my own little mini project, just to get them going on like day 3 of class, and see what's going to happen. This year, it was all about throwing a tennis ball. I thought it'd be, plus it was something we could do in the Arboretum, and the outdoor school students could participate, because anyone knows how to throw a ball. So what we did is we set up an experiment where everybody just takes a ball and throws it as far as they can. We measured it. Everybody got 2 throws, including the teachers. And then I started introducing different concepts within physics. And we'd sit there and we'd sit in a big circle, and I'd talk about leverage. And then that led to a sling. And we talked about, and I showed them how to make a simple sling with some rope and a piece of cloth. And the idea was to see if we could throw the tennis ball farther. And so they used slings. They had to design them themselves, long ropes, short ropes. And then that led to, well, how do we make our arms even longer? And that led to sling on a stick. So take a stick with a sling on the end of it, kind of like if you were like a catapult, but not just powered by a person just doing this. And that worked, and it worked for some, didn't work for others. Everybody at that point, it started to see what would work well and what didn't work well. They had to deal with failure when the ball landed behind them. And they had to, just make some changes and try it again. That turned into a torsion catapult. Then somebody said, hey, I want to make a giant slingshot. Can we do that? So I brought in some surgical tubing, and they were shooting slingshots today out in the Arboretum. So, and in order to, they worked to, come up with the best designs. The one that's in the picture right there, we tried that today. Didn't really work. Didn't throw the ball nearly as far as we wanted it to. And we had to sit there and say, well, what do we have to change about this thing? There's something flawed about the design. We looked at it, it looks like it's just throwing it up in the air instead of far. Sometimes it throws it into the ground. So we're going to spend the next couple of classes changing that and figuring out and trying new things, knowing what we know so far about physics and what we've learned by doing. So this is the task that they've started out with. In order to, and like 2 classes ago, I decided, because they were having trouble tying the ropes to the piece of cloth. Larry and we gave them some lessons about how to tie knots. And we just spent the entire class sitting there learning to tie different kind of knots for different kind of situations. And interestingly, as they were doing that, one student went over and he's tying some knots, and he made a swing in the tree. So it's like, well, that's pretty cool. So, the question is, where we go from here? I'm not 100% sure, but that idea of somebody and the fact that everybody was like, whoa, it's a swing. Can I swing on it? That may lead to a construction project where they're using these various things and the ropes to build something else. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I'd probably need about 2 more classes to really let them focus and hear from them what interests them. And I want to give, we want to quit catapults and start building swings and structures. I'm perfectly fine with that. I can teach physics through that. But using those interests to drive the curriculum and not being afraid to just, all right, we're done with this. Let's move on to something that they're more interested in. I don't know what it's going to be right now, but we'll see. We'll see in the next week or two. With that, I'd like to pass it off to Larry.
I was the first to do that. Now you can hear me. I'm Larry Bunner. For those that don't know me, this is my 4th year at the school. A little bit of my background: I was a Peace Corps volunteer after college in Nepal. I was teaching both ESL and science, which I had to somehow do, especially early on, in the Nepalese language. And that took a lot of play with the kids to try to help me to understand each other. When I came back, I was in wilderness education for adjudicated youth out in Utah. And later on, after that, I taught science and global studies at the Putney School in Vermont. And then I moved into Brooklyn. I spent 8 years in the public school teaching biology and earth science. While I was there, I got really interested in food and environmental issues. So I got heavily involved in the founding of this Bay Ridge Food Co-op and the building and maintaining living roofs in and around the city. So just by nature, I'm an experiential educator, looking for myself, and I'm an avid outdoor enthusiast. And when I can, a traveler, though COVID is not exactly that time. In connecting to this book and connecting to our school, and the quote is, I believe our world needs young people who know how to think deeply, communicate clearly, resolve conflicts, and lead with empathy. And this is true in all the different places that I've kind of been over the years. And I feel so kind of blessed to be in a spot that really tries to do that. When we moved out of the city, we wanted to move back to the Jersey Shore where I grew up. And I found the spot, and it gives that space so that kids can grow. And I find it's very important that we allow students to go deep, to make mistakes, to explore. When you let go and you engage the students, discipline issues disappear and real learning happens. That's from one of the principals in that Dintersmith actually interviewed. So talking about the outdoor school. In the past, the outdoor school has always been engaged in projects that have given them the opportunity to act out scenarios based on different time periods, concepts introduced in the lesson, physically engage with their surroundings in their arboretum. They're co-constructing knowledge by acting collaboratively to ask questions. They challenge their own thoughts of others. They integrate new knowledge and come up with working theories. We use accompanying text to seed the conversations, and the teachers work behind the scenes to kind of carefully observe, direct the enactment with new ideas and challenges. And this year, so a lot of kids who are coming up from last year, and they're like excited to get the outdoor school and they want to get into these role plays and all of that. So we started that. Our lens this year is US history out there, a big part of our lens. And so there's 2 things happen right away. Kids were talking about to play Hamilton. So we're like, okay, we gotta go there, use that. That'll be fun. But first we wanted to kind of build up to that because there's a history course. So let's go about the colonial settlements. And so given our time, we did a miniature version of one of these constructions. So they kind of built miniature settlements, and it's kind of a shortened time frame. It gives them an entry into group work, which is fun to watch, working hands-on to try to build structures with materials available to them in nature. Weather elements caused structures to collapse. They had to come up with new ways to build it, maybe stronger, maybe better. We could then discuss firsthand knowledge, what settlers had to do to build from nothing. We asked them to write character sketches about fictional historical characters that would live in this town, Jamestown, And a lot of them wanted to be women. And we that kind of brought up a thing. This is the 1600s, but like women didn't have that much agency. So, what do we do now? And so that brought up that kind of whole discussion about, different people's rights and what the different class systems were within that structure of the colonies. This all culminated in them doing kind of a slideshow and a group presentation about that. And that's what they did, worked on. And this led into our getting to the Revolutionary War. And that is where they're using Hamilton as the musical Hamilton as the bridge to learn about the American Revolution and the roles of the founding fathers played at the start of our nation. So we're asking questions like who was in that room where it happened? And they're like, oh, I know the song. And then we're talking about the people, like these founding fathers. How'd they get there? What were they doing? What's their background? How'd they get there? What are their interests? Who were they? What were they looking for when they were coming up with those founding documents that we all live within at this time? Where were they? What actually happened? We got to talk about that. So that's where we are. We're really just engaging that. We're about a week into that, and it's fun to watch because they just kind of go with it, and we kind of walk around and kind of, we have different discussions in there, little side discussions or a little bit of content before. We really can we're digging into it, and it's a lot of fun. I'm going to go just a time on. I just at the last little part, just connecting to Rich with that knot work. I actually thought about doing knots at the beginning of the year, and I was like, yeah, let's do knots. And all the kids were like, not that much fun. Then we actually had some rainy days, and we had to get out there, and we set up a big tarp so we could kind of have a discussion under. And a lot of them were standing around because they really didn't know how to tie any knots. And so, and then also we were working on the physics stuff, realizing, well, knots would work to build this stuff. We went back with Rich with tying knots, and a lot more people were interested in oh, maybe I could use this right now. And an added little thing that was cute today is that not only were we using knots for the practical physics stuff, but the kids were using it for, some of them were doing the knots for weaving. So bandanas and then weaving of baskets because we're talking about props with it. So it's fun to watch overlap right there. I'm going to pass it on. One of the big things, and it's a little tidbit of a quote with the Arboretum and just the school culture, that we allow these middle schoolers and all the students to have that space to think and to grow. And that's a beautiful thing for us to be able to be a part of. I'm going to pass this on now to Diana.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for sticking with us. I know we're running a little bit over time, so just beg you to stay with us for a little bit longer. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Diana. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the preschool director, member of the admissions team, and a team teacher for the lower school. This is my third year at Voyagers and my 6th year working in a progressive school environment. I'm a New Jersey certified elementary school teacher with experience in all classroom settings. So some of you may wonder, how does this all translate to our littlest learners? Well, simply put, our preschoolers are actively learning from the moment they enter the building to the moment they leave. While the K-12 curriculum involves project-based learning, our Reggio-inspired preschool prioritizes play-based, hands-on learning. While reading Ted Dintersmith's book, What Schools Could Be, I found myself, like Karen, saying over and over again, this is Voyagers. This is what happens at Voyagers. Voyagers is exactly what school should be. I was actually struck by the following quotes between 2 parent educators, the Sanderfors, who opened and run a school in Austin, Texas, and Dintersmith. The Sanderfors actually said, "We saw the light going out in our children's eyes." Our world needs young people who know how to think deeply, communicate clearly, resolve conflicts, and lead with empathy. I am truly amazed by what young people can accomplish when adults stop micromanaging them and give them space to think and grow. When young people want to learn, they learn at a 10 times rate. Like the founders of the Reggio Emilia schools in Italy, we believe that all children have rights and must be given the opportunity to develop their potential. Children are powerful and capable and possess a desire to construct their own knowledge. Through play, exploration, and discovery, our youngest children are afforded the opportunities to do just that at Voyagers. Our amazing team of teacher researchers take time to listen to your children and truly believe that every child's voice matters. As you are all aware, we use Seesaw to document your child's everyday activities and learning. I encourage you all to not only look at Seesaw posts, but to look at them with your child, with your children. Let them serve as a springboard to discuss what they're learning at school, help you put faces to names of the kids in the class, and keep the doorway of communication open. We are, after all, partners in this amazing journey. I am going to introduce Catherine. She is our preschool teaching assistant, and she will talk a little bit about Loris Malaguchi and the 100 Languages of Children.
Thank you, Diana. I'm Catherine. I'm one of the preschool teachers in the Voyagers Community School. It's my first year working here, and I'm super excited to be joining the family. A little about me is I graduated from Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania with a degree in elementary and special education. I've been working with kids since I was like 15. So being in a classroom setting with infants and toddlers is perfect for me because I have two nieces, which would actually be in that classroom if they were a part of this school. I'll be discussing the poem, 100 Languages of Children by Laura Malaguchi. He was instrumental in the development of Reggio Emilia, which is the approach to early education. The poem refers to communication and emphasizes the importance of providing children with multiple ways of thinking and understanding the world around them. I found a really interesting quote by Ted Dintersmith. One said that if you are looking for eye-popping optimism, spend time with young children. They're natural learners, brimming with curiosity, audacity, and creativity, which is exactly true in the room that I'm working with the kids. At Voyagers, we see children as individuals who are capable of doing and communicating their unique abilities in extraordinary ways. We believe in the potential of the child's ability to wonder. Understanding these languages of children helps us to give voice to every child's thoughts and ideas, and that the 100 Languages incorporates hands-on discovery using all of the senses. Children are encouraged to express their thoughts and feelings through drawing, sculpting, dramatic play, writing, dance, music, etc. A lot more. I only mentioned not 6, so there's 100, like 96 more. I encourage you to all read the poem and listen to the languages of children. I found a really cute one on the internet. The music is fantastic. You have little kids' voices saying and repeating the poem. So I would really, really encourage you to read it. I wish I could read it now, but we're running out of time. So next I'll be turning it over to Emma, who will be talking about the curriculum in the classroom.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Emma. A little bit about me is this is my 6th school year here at Voyagers, my 6th school year in the preschool. I've been in the preschool department ever since it started 6 years ago. And this year I got a new title of the Associate Director to the preschool, and I'm very excited to be stepping into a leadership role within the program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our curriculum and how we develop it. So our curriculum is student-centered, self-guided, and it's based on the ever-changing interests of the children. Dintersmith had a great quote, and it is, if a child is lit up by an experience, build on it. And that is essentially what we do here in the preschool every single day. All the teachers here at Voyagers, we have a title, and it's teacher researcher. And essentially what that is we are a teacher, but we also take the time to sit and listen to the kids when they're doing these explorations. We take the time to watch what they are doing and how they are manipulating materials. And then we take those things that we observe and we roll with it and we develop studies and curriculums off of that. So essentially, I'm going to walk you through really quickly what happened this school year so far. It's only been a month, but the curriculum has already changed. So we started the school year with farm animals, into the animals, the jobs on the farm, the crops, you name it. One day I brought out one of our Ozobots. It's a really neat piece of technology that the kids have been familiar with over the course of the past few years. And I did an activity based around farms with these Ozobots. And ever since that activity, they have not been able to stop talking about robots. So instantly, I phased out farm and said, let's roll with robots and see what happens. So just by simply listening to the kids and understanding and taking what their interests are, I completely changed the curriculum. The first thing that I did was I created a curriculum map. And each teacher, researcher here at Voyagers does curriculum mapping a little bit differently. But I love taking up an entire whiteboard. And what I do is I start with the main topic in the middle of robots, and then I create almost a spider web of all the different direction that these kids could take this study. Because for all I know, we could walk in on Monday and the kids could have a completely different obsession and want to study that. So with this curriculum map, I'm able to drop a current study and pick up a whole different one almost instantaneously. And basically throughout a common theme throughout all of these different, like the whole entire curriculum map is I'm asking the children questions, just having discussions with them, having them hypothesize, revisit and refine, clarify their understandings. Throughout the course of this development of the curriculum map, we also keep in mind that there are developmental milestones that each child should be striving to reach throughout the course of their time in the preschool. We use the New Jersey state standards for preschool development as a basic guide to support us in the planning of our emerging curriculum as we design it continuously throughout the year. It's only been a month of school and we've already completely changed our curriculum. And I'm very excited to see where the next rest of the school year will take us in what direction. So that's essentially what we do and how we plan our curriculums here in the preschool. I am now going to turn this over to Laura.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, I am Laura. I am the Director of Student Support. I am a board certified analyst. I have a master's degree in psychology and I've been working with children for many years. I'm going to talk about our social and emotional learning curriculum. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning describes social and emotional learning as an integral part of education and human development. Social and emotional learning is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. We are integrating an evidence-based social and emotional learning curriculum to best support our students and faculty. This process will develop a trust between members of our community that will provide the foundation for an environment conducive to respect, learning, and collaboration. I'm also going to touch upon the topic of trust from the Ted Dintersmith book, as Katie did, because it is so important. In his book, he states, peak environments underscore a critical issue in education, trust. If we don't trust teachers and students, we won't have peak, period. He goes on to say, the role of teachers changes in peak environments. They don't lecture, these teachers advise, mentor, and coach. They care, they change lives. Our social and emotional learning curriculum allows for interactive discussions on each topic. It is inspiring to hear the students' input, and this takes us to deeper discussions of these topics and to explore new ideas as they arise. The first element of PEAK is purpose, where students work on problems that are important to them and their community. One of the processes of our social and emotional learning curriculum is to help students identify their purpose, what they value, what they deeply care about. When you can connect with your values or purpose and why it is important to you, the easier it will be to stay on track and with your goals and choices. All of the processes of our social and emotional learning curriculum work together to increase psychological flexibility. This will allow for better living with adaptive, flexible behavior that leads to success in various environments. This is what I will be bringing to the students and teachers, a curriculum to change lives for the better. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Karen.
So it's wonderful to have such a staff, to know that they can vocalize the importance of their work, the energy put toward their work. I have to say that I'm brimming with pride. This faculty and staff, I think, has notably demonstrated PEAK. They work with purpose, attacking the challenges of hearing and engaging students. They're armed with essentials as they acquire the skill sets and mindsets necessary to provide deep experiences. They have agency, owning their professional learning, and are self-directed and model intrinsic motivation in their work. And they possess knowledge. What they learn and offer is deep and retained. They create, make, and teach with new eyes day after day and year after year. It is an absolute pleasure to work with this group of people. I'm going to close this section with a Dintersmith quote. Then Christina is going to go over our calendar to remind you of some items to join us with. And then we're going to turn to Q&A. Again, I know we're running late, but please, if you could, stay with us. I'm going to go back to the end of the book, the reflections that Ted provides. The innovation era plays to America's strengths. I like this particular section because we're in this period of election and there's lots of negativity and negative talk about our nation, but I am proud to be an American. And I think that this quote is so vitally important. Again, the innovation era plays to America's strengths. We're the most creative, innovative society on the planet. We lead the world in Nobel Prizes, in music, in art, in patents, in technology, innovative startups, in social entrepreneurship. Our country is in the perfect position to thrive. But getting on the right side of innovation has to start with education. In 1893, America had the courage to transform schools to prepare young adults for a world of manufacturing. Let us once again have the courage to transform our schools, to launch our children into lives of purpose, to unleash their potential, to create a better future for all. We are, and this is me saying it, we are poised for an education revolution, and I believe that Voyagers is part of leading the way. My purpose at this point, I've created this proof of concept, and my purpose is, in fact, to mentor for an education revolution. And I hope that giving you this time and giving you this information arms you with the ability to join us. So let's shake it up. Let's change this world. Let's step into the innovation era together.